hotep and a racist white person is? A hotep can't they can't influence my life to the point where I can't find housing, a job, or be murdered by the police. They just dumb people that say dumb shit. Racist white people, on the other hand.
No, that's where you're wrong. Hoteps oppress Black women.
How so? We don't have the institutional power to oppress anybody. This is how we get into these conversations.
We answered that question, but we're on your point with. This is where everything was going so well, by the way.
So you're asking how is sexism oppressive?
Yep.
How is sexism oppressive?
Sexism is definitely oppressive. I just don't think that Black men have the institutional power to be oppressive. That's all I'm saying. Like, can we be sexist? Like, can we do things like can we engage in sexist acts? Absolutely, but we don't have the institutional power to keep you places where you don't want to be kept, and you don't have an outlet to actually interfere or intervene in that. You can call the coercive apparatus of the police to get us off your back. Opposed to what racism is, there is nobody to call when white people act up. Who are we calling? We're appealing to other white folk. If I act up, we call the cops.
So going with that scenario,
yeah.
Knowing the relationship between Black people and cops in this country, do you really expect a Black woman to call the cops on a Black man?
There's caveats though. That's the thing. You're like, all right. Like, I agree with you. Like, if I was a Black woman living by myself and someone broke in, I would not fucking call the cops. You're absolutely right. Not
to mention, I may, that the same way you cannot call the cops on somebody being racist. Like, there's just not a direct translation there. You can't call the cops on somebody being sexist.
You just, of course you can. If the person is Black, that's a great thing. That's a great thing about racism for everybody else except for Black men, right? You can call the cops and say, I felt threatened by him and I am gone. Period. The end. Ain't gonna be, I don't have to do anything. I don't have to say anything. I just have to exist. And somebody's coming to beat me over the head. Period. That's all there is. He made me feel unsafe. And if the equation is that, like, that's the whole purpose of this policing apparatus.
But basically what you're saying is, like, so what you're saying is that Black women, in order to not be oppressed by Black men, should play into the system that is killing Black people? Like, that don't make sense.
I never said should, and I'm just saying this is something that's available to them. And again,
there's a lot of shit that is available to me, right?
But my original premise,
there's a 7-8-year-old white man somewhere that is available to me. Like,
no,
does that mean that? Like, come on now.
My original premise is I don't have the institutional power to oppress you. Like, can I engage in an act to harm you? Absolutely. Just like you can engage in an act to harm me. But when we talk about systems, there's no way for me to draw on anything to perpetuate it. I cannot.
That might be true, but it doesn't mean, so systemic oppression is not the only oppression that exists.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you're talking about sexism.
Elaborate, please. I'm sorry. I know we went off on a tangent, but I need to hear what you have to say on this.
I'm having fun. Like, I didn't step back. I'm not the host anymore for a while.
Fun for y'all. Drae loves this shit, but I hate this shit. Like, I hate being a woman that has to, like, I almost feel like I be feeling like sexism is not real. And I have to say, like, that it is. And it's like,
I've never said that. Sexism, I absolutely agree and support you in the idea that sexism, not even the idea, the reality that sexism is there and it's real. What I always push back against, because when I keep thinking about when people say Black men as oppressors, oppression requires me to have the power to keep it going. Like,
there is power that Black men have to
over Black women. Yes. That's the thing. There's an intervening force that can stop that at any moment. Like, again, that is the difference. Like, I use racist, the police or community or whatever. Like you can look at me all that like you want, but I'm just saying, if she called, all right, like, like looking at all the layers of privilege. Actually, I'm not even going to go into the other layers of privilege here, but let's just say, like me, her in a home, and I've experienced this myself with my parents, right? I'm just thinking about this as a kid. My parents got into an argument. Someone called the police. My father was the one who was escorted out of the house in handcuffs. No one asked what happened. They just saw my mother crying. There was no questions. I have very vivid memories of this. There was no questions. They just told him to put his hands behind his back, and he had to leave. He had to go. That was it. There was no
right. But what I said before was the same way you cannot. So if you walk into a store and the store owner starts following you around because you're a Black man, you're not going to call the police and be like, hey, they're being racist. They're following me around. Why would a Black woman who is experiencing sexism at the hands of any Black man call the police and be like, oh, he's being sexist? It makes no sense. It makes no sense.
Well, we're talking about oppression versus, but all right, like if we're talking about sexism, and like, can you give me an example?
Sexism is a form of oppression.
Absolutely, but when I was thinking of oppression, I was thinking like coercive. But let's just say like we're using, like, what context are we using, just so I can like frame what I'm gonna say better. Can you give me an example of what you mean? Like, are we talking professionally? Are we talking like other way? Like, I'm just trying to find a specific way that sexism applies here before I say something else.
I mean, I could give you an example, but like, I feel like it takes away from the fact that sexism, generally speaking, like happens at the hands of Black men to Black women.
But again, it's one of those things where I just have such a hard time, because all I keep thinking about is if you want to stop, right? Like the big difference, though, like we're always talking about power structures, right? This is how these things happen. So it's like if you're a woman working in, let's say, a corporate situation, and your male boss says like, hey, like, starts, I don't know, not even overtly, but like, inadvertently started doing things like keeping you out of meetings because you won't go to the football game, or if you won't, participate in very male-oriented things, I could definitely see that as sexism. Now, how do you get that to stop? Who are you going to go to? It's very difficult for you to go to another man within that structure to help you out in that situation as a woman. I recognize, I fully understand that. What I'm saying is, when we're dealing in the dynamics between Black man, Black woman, all I'm saying is that there is another place for you to go. It can be based on race, because the coercive apparatuses that we have, that everything that's built around distrust, around fear, centered around Black men. It's not really about Black women. I mean, I know people don't like to hear that. Even Breonna Taylor is a good example of when people say we don't fight for her, why did she get shot? Remember, they broke into her house trying to shoot a guy. It wasn't her. She just got caught in the crossfire. No one's hunting you. That's where the big, massive difference is. So that's like when I like say these things.
It doesn't matter. It does not fucking matter. First of all, that's debatable, because Black women are killed and brutalized every fucking day. So different circumstances, right?
And you can't call the police to stop that.
What happened?
What?
And you can't call the police to stop that.
Right, but I'm also not just talking about like physical violence and safety. Like, there are other ways to oppress Black women. It is the fact that, and obviously this is not all Black people, let me say that, because Drae loved to jump to like, well, not all Black men.
I never do that.
You do all the time.
I definitely don't. All right, go ahead.
But in a lot of Black communities, it's like there's just, it's culture and it's expectations to be submissive, to follow the lead of the husband. If a woman cheats, it is the end of the world. If a man cheats, men are not designed to like, all of those things are oppressive.
Some of those things are correct. Some of those things are absolutely correct. I agree with you about the cheating, but in our community, it is a matriarch. And to say that it's not is just like ignoring the very real, tangible.
When you say our community, what community are you talking about?
Black community. The Black community as a whole within the United States of America is a matriarchy. Because again, our men are removed from the house. We're criminalized very young, so it takes us away from employment, takes us away from getting education. Black women outpace us in education, outpace us in home ownership. Everything that's material, that matters to your life.
Okay, cool. Cool.
No,
So let's
no.
go.
Before you
Let's
jump in
go
there.
with the scenario. Wait, Mel, hold on. Let's go with the scenario of Black communities are matriarchal communities. That let's just say, for argument's sake, that that's true.
Okay.
Black women hold up. Black women contribute to like being oppressed by Black men as much as Black men do.
That's a tough one. I mean, yes and no, but I mean, I can concede to it. Yeah, like there's definitely a lot of elements. Like you're right. Like there's no greater upholders of you know, like the sexist things like around what you were talking about, like sex shaming more so than other women. There's no bigger force to people like, you know, talking about what men like and what men will go for, what kind of woman you should be to keep a man more so than women do. That's more of a, I totally agree with that. I'm not going to dispute that. But when we talk about, I think more of like, I think what we're having a dispute in is like maybe cultural versus material. And all I keep thinking about is like housing applications, right? So Black men have less of a chance of getting housing. Like, we're more likely to be homeless. We're more likely to be.
I understand that, but this is not about Black men versus Black women. And here's the thing: when we're talking about sexism, when we're talking about sexism, women are more likely to experience sexism than men. Of course, men experience sexism, but women are more likely to experience sexism. You have to put yourself in the shoes of a woman, not in the shoes of a man trying to understand, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you have to put yourself in the shoes of a woman and what it means to be a woman experiencing sexism at the hands of a man.
I completely like Whitney. It's not that I disagree with you. Like, all right, like great example. If we were in Jamaica right now, hands down, no argument, 1000% right. There'd be no room to argue, no conflicting anything. I just have to recognize all the other structures that are in place in this melting pot, or whatever they want to call it, that we live in, that doesn't allow for that. Like the reason why we can't have a patriarchy here is because of race. The coercive apparatus actually benefits you on some level because, again, like the material things that matter, that make our lives what they are, like simple things like shelter, you have a better opportunity of getting that. So what power do I have? Like the reason why like a lot of white men have power over their wives, or historically, is that they control the home. If you don't do what I say in this house,
Black men have power over Black women because of culture.
Yes and no. I would have agreed with that maybe 30 years ago, 40 years ago, but I think culture has definitely shifted. Like, you know what the greatest example, I always say this, and I think about this a lot, no other group of women feel bold and empowered enough to say specifically their men ain't shit. I've never heard an Asian woman say Asian men ain't shit. I've never heard Latino women say Latin men ain't shit. Never heard white women say white men ain't shit. But you can throw a stone and find a group of Black women right now, as we're speaking in this conversation, saying right now, Black men ain't shit.
Right. Now they oppress us.
Like, all right, do you see what I mean though by when you say culture is like they're being oppressed by culture? The oppressed group doesn't normally feel so empowered to specifically, if you're saying men ain't shit, right? And we have the least amount of power over
Black
our women
people
than
say
any other demographic.
White people ain't shit all the time. It's literally the same.
What does that do? Complaining about being mistreated, like why is it like what power? We're talking about power, like okay, so Black woman says that, and then what?
Again, all I'm saying is in an oppressive like in the oppressive structure that we're talking about right now, where again, it's not so much that we can control you in any other way. Again, we don't control your housing. We don't control your employment. You're less likely to have a Black, like any other demographic. Yeah.
All right. So for that one, because you made this point before. So education, yes, numbers say like a lot. We know that the women are catching a lot of degrees, and you talk about material. You know, the one thing that all women are getting fucked over on is their salary. So it's not every material. They do all this work. And I mean, I'm not, I'm pretty accomplished, but I also have some setbacks and hangups. And there's a woman with a PhD who has had no employment gaps, and we're making the same amount of money.
Yeah, but that's anecdotal, family. Again, if you go, like, if you actually restrict it race by race, job by job, actually, Black women make more money than we do, because you have to also, like, a lot of times when they take those labor statistics into consideration, they don't consider people that are incarcerated into that, because those people will be non-employed, or even if they do use them, they use their free labor as employment. So it's very easy for people to think that, but again, like 1-to-1, Black men to Black women, we're 2 million people. There's 2 million of us incarcerated right now that are taken out of the job force. 90%, like, so even if you say, sorry, let me be very accurate. 2 million people, 2 million Black people as a whole, 90% of that being Black men, taken out of the workforce. So when they don't control for that. So it's very easy to get into this thing, like, yes, you can do these like anecdotal 1-to-ones, where it's like, I know that I make more money than this particular woman, but as a whole, again, Black women have more institutional power than we do. And it's not because, again, right. It's easy to say that. It's very,
so,
again, it's very,
I gotta get English teacher real quick. That may be true. However, it is like faulty line of reasoning.
Why so? Like, how so?
So is the system, I mean, okay. This is just a yes or no question. So a bunch of Black men are disproportionately in jail. Are we saying that it is the system and exclusively the system that has Black men in jail?
No, absolutely not. Again, like, there's a lot of cultural things in there, but I'm just saying in the real lived reality of what we're talking about, right? When we talk about these things where we're talking about patriarchy, because remember, patriarchy means male rule. When we're talking about oppression, how do you oppress somebody when we're living in a matriarchy? Like, it's like saying that, like, white women are oppressing white men. Does that sound right? How is that possible when they're living in a patriarchy where white men rule? So within our community, and again, it's not because like Black women are being shitty. I'm not saying that at all, but because of other like mitigating factors where we're at right now, because so many of us are removed from the workforce, removed from the community, Black women de facto become the leaders within our community. They become the matriarchs, right? Everybody understands that. So if that happens to be,
don't understand. I don't believe for a second. I know multiple women who have all these qualifications and they're not a leader. They're just highly educated and very successful.
Right. But again, does your anecdotal
then equated that to, and they are the leaders. I don't see that part.
Your anecdotal experience doesn't equate for everything, does it? Again, we all know, like we all know, right? How many Black women are single mothers and the leaders of their home, right? Like, we know this statistic. We know that there are more single Black women, but so they're the leaders of.
That in and of itself is like oppression. Like, why do women? The only way women get to be leaders is if there's a Black man not in the picture. Like,
and their son turned 12, they're now, you got to take. And this is what I'm sorry. And the thing that you keep throwing anecdotal to me, but you're the one who used your mother and father's scenario as one example of this is what I mean by when we call the cops.
But then I also gave statistical analysis. I didn't leave it at that. I also used prison populations. I also used demographics and employment. I didn't use just this one thing of what happened in my own life as to be the end all be all. No, I used other things. That was just one example amongst others.
I didn't do that either, but okay. All right.
Drae over here triangulating his data. That's what we call that.
All right, but guys, this was just a good example of what it's like on Lit the Right Way.
Right. No, this is 100%. But it's like, it's cool. Like, this is, and this happens. It's not like he doesn't know what he's talking about at all. It's just like the conclusion is weird. Like, yeah, I don't. A single mother in her own household is now some leader. She's the leader in that room, and that's not true. But if it was, that's not system. That's a very small house in a rather unattractive neighborhood. you know, and that's
woman being the sole provider for her child or her children, like that is not leadership either. Like that is a fucking burden.
And again, so because she's not in jail, so this black mother who we know isn't getting, who like in in generally speaking is not being paid well, but she's the leader of the house and she makes more than the guy in jail. Like
I mean, would you rather be at home taking care of your kids, or would you rather be incarcerated? If we're gonna, because again, like you're saying these things as if they don't matter. They make a huge difference.
I don't believe, but I don't believe in like those don't need to be the only two options. Like
I don't say that they do, but they're a reality.
Taking care of my kids.
Everybody isn't taken out of the workforce. They did something they shouldn't have done. Like there's plenty of shitty justice system, but to just be like 2 million men are in jail. Well, how many of them is a very good reason that happened? And
a lot of them are there on trumped up, because a lot of them are in there on trumped up drug charges for possession. A lot of them are like, there are not as many in there for violent crimes as they would have us believe. So the same thing. I'm sorry, go ahead, hon.
No, and I'll just have y'all read The New Jim Crow?
I did, like by what's her name, Alexander, right? Michelle Alexander.
So I read this with my juniors, and it talks about how like for years and years and years, like the justice system has preyed upon Black men. And here's the thing, like, did they do something to be put in prison? Yes. However, what makes it problematic is that Black people commit crimes at the same rate as white people.
That's a fact.
So part of
and get 20% more time.
Part of the issue is that Black people are being preyed upon. So like, yes, we have Black men who they have drug charges, they have whatever kind of charges, like bullshit. There's Black men being arrested for not paying child support, right? Like we know that our justice system overly criminalizes Black men. Right. So I just wanted to say that.
Right.
It's amazing.
No, it's a good book, and it was actually a good documentary too. Well done. I'm not gonna front. Very well done. Actually, it should be a topic we should bring up that book for a show. That'd be really dope.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, just like, here, this is what she does. Anyway.
Drae, an hour ago, Drae is just like, yeah, I missed you guys.
Yeah, fuck that shit.
Just like, okay, I'm done. Had my fill.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't get me wrong, and I want to like make this clear. I understand that there's definitely a lot of discrepancies in households when a Black man and a Black woman are present. That goes without saying. There's a lot of cultural things involved there. I definitely agree with that. But there's other things that we there's other things that we also have to take into account, and other things that we have to recognize and not kind of pull. Because I think one of the biggest problems that we've had, and we've had this conversation before, about feminism, and I forgot who this I forgot who the name of this this really good author was on this, but she made a good point about the worst crime that feminism ever did to Black women is making us think that their problems are Black women's problems as well, because their problems with their men are completely different than the problems that Black women have with our men, and it's just not the same. Like when we talk about the patriarchy, it's just not the same. We're playing this game like it's a 1-to-1, and we're like you have a bigger chance of being oppressed by by white women more so than Black men. Consider the way that this country is run, like where race is more important than gender, right?
Where'd you pull that statistic from?
What?
Where'd you pull that statistic from?
The United States of America, there's never been anything codified around gender, but there's a shit ton of things codified around race, and we still feel it right now.
I need the receipt.
So, what receipts? You mean everything up until 1968 and the Civil Rights? The Civil Rights Act? Like, again,
you said
nothing. No. Say it again. There's nothing that's been Yeah.
There's nothing being codified around gender in the way that it's been around race in this country. Again, the simplest equation on this is easy, right? Who has more power in a societal situation, me or a white woman? Who has more power than me? Who has more power, me or an Asian woman? Like, so again, so in this country, it is race first, then gender. That's just the way this country works.
That's cool.
Imagine being a Black woman.
All right, and again, that's where the equations get fucked up, because again, it's making it seem as if, all right, you have these two things that are working against you, being Black and being a woman, right? Like that's where the thinking comes from. But within this context of the way we live, who is targeted more, Black women or Black men? If we're saying who is targeted by the oppressive apparatus that we know. What?
Again, my whole argument is that Black women are oppressed by Black men. So when you ask a question like who is targeted, like, yes, Black men are targeted more by systemic racism.
Yeah, the actual powers that be.
But how can Black men oppress you without power? Again, there might be social things that are in place, but if I don't have the power to keep you out of a house, if I don't have the power to keep you in a house, if I cannot control your food, if I cannot control your employment, if I cannot control these things that matter to you actually producing material things to survive, how can I possibly?
So basically, if there's not a rule in a rule book, then I can't keep you from doing something? Because that's the only way you can say, like, you say all those things like none of them are true, and the only way you could say that I can't keep somebody in her house or out of the house is because I can't go to some law book, because that's happening all.
That has nothing to do with there has to be an intervening power, right? So, like, again, if I all right, good example. If I was with any of my white exes,
that's not true, by the way.
Right.
Okay.
You just skip over that. It's like take this.
That's the faulty line of reasoning. Like that's just not true. It's true for you as a Black man in America. It is not true for a Black woman in America. You can oppress somebody in more ways than
I have to be at the top of the food chain. And I'm in that group, that part of the pyramid is the only one that can oppress or be racist or say, nah, man, I can't go.
No, never. There's levels to it. Yeah.
I just want to say, so the next game that we have to start playing is Drae turning our conversation into oppression Olympics between Black women and Black men.
Right.
I never
know, because it's like can Black men oppress Black women? Well, no, because the system oppressed Black.
No, again, she didn't say that. She didn't say it as a specific one-on-one. She made a point of saying that Black men oppress Black women, and I am saying that there is no institutional power to do that shit. You cannot do that if you don't have the power to do it.
Form of power, though. Institutional power is not the only form of power.
That's the way that you as a Black man get oppressed. It is different. You get oppressed in a different way being a Black woman.
By a Black man.
Yes.
Well, we can agree to disagree as we do on many things. I definitely don't see it that way.
Okay. So the only thing I had, are there other forms of power besides institutional power? Or do you think yes or no?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
But
I know that's not enough to suddenly change your mind. So.
No, I mean, again, but I think like it comes down to staying power. Like absolutely, like. Again, like there's a power dynamic between you and I as two men. I can hit you, you can hit me. Like there is a power dynamic there.
Right.
Like you can harm me, I can harm you. But yeah.
It was like I can mute you because I haven't done that in a very long time. It has been such a long. We've done the open mics. You know, it's just,
I should have stayed fucking muted. I hate you. People.
I have power in the thing. I can do it again. I'm just fucking with you. I'm just fucking.
Oh, whatever. All right.